Welcome to the Light Warrior Podcast. This episode is brought to you by Show Me Music, the highest quality basses and bass amps, as well as guitar amps, digital mixers, powered speakers, and effects, with brands like Ampeg, Bergantino Audio, Blackstar, Gensler Amplification, Dingwall, and many others. Show Me Music is your premier dealer for the highest in guitar, bass, and audio gear. Check them out online if you're a musician or if you know a musician. ShowMemusic.com, SHOME music.com. My name is Paul Berezetsky, and my guest today is Benjamin Tennant. Ben and I met at a qigong workshop with Michael Lomax about a year or two ago, which was actually Ben's first workshop, and it proved to be a pretty life-changing experience for him. It set him on a course of pursuing being a therapist, a massage therapist, and a healer full-time. He has left a job in finance to pursue this path, and tells me about what was going on in his head and what the journey has been like for him. We also get into the weeds a little bit about philosophy and the struggle of maintaining a rational scientific outlook on things while also being immersed in the metaphysical practice like qigong and energy healing. Please enjoy my conversation with Ben Tennant. All right, man. Welcome to the show. I guess let's get started. I'm talking with Benjamin Tennant, and I'm talking to you in nice, sunny, warm Canada.
Yeah, bud. We got a nice sunny day today.
Oh, you do?
10 degrees Celsius or
beautiful.
45, 50 for you Americans and your Fahrenheit.
Wait, you're you're nicely above freezing. Not bad, not bad.
Yeah, we're doing good here.
Actually, I'm in San Diego right now, and we've had what for us is kind of a cold snap. It's been like at night. It's been like yesterday. It was like 45 degrees, which is by our standards, it's like, you know, everyone's like, what are, you know, we're paying property taxes to avoid this. What's going on?
Yeah, I'd be worried, but your president assures me that there's no such thing as climate change, so I feel pretty good about that.
He wouldn't lie. I forgot, where in Canada are you?
About as far south in Canada as you can get, so southwest of Toronto, in a little town, Kitchener-Waterloo, not so little, but compared to cities, it's little, known for the blackberry and having a few universities, I suppose.
Yeah, a moment of silence for the extinct blackberry. It was a beautiful dodo bird.
You're a fan?
No, I wasn't. I was actually pretty late to the smartphone game. I'm really only on, I think, my second smartphone now. I was kind of holding off as long as I could.
Good for you.
And now, of course, as we were talking yesterday, like I pretty much barely read books anymore. And just those damn gadgets take over your whole life.
Yeah, got all the podcasts to do. Yeah, that takes a lot of time.
Well, that's the other thing. Like, I'm really a big fan of podcasts, obviously, and that's primarily how I consume content is in forms like that. It's like, because the thing I like about it is I can go about and do other things. Like, I really don't have that much time anymore to just kind of hang out and sit and read a book so much. But
yeah,
if I'm listening to something, I could at least, you know, do some dishes, do some laundry, something.
Yeah, I get you. I'm the same way.
Cool. So anyway, I don't have like any specific kind of theme or agenda for this conversation. I just wanted to, shoot the shit with you a little bit and kind of get a little bit of a perspective. The previous guests that I had on have been people that have been practicing our particular lineage system of qigong for quite a while. Most of them for a few years, 5, 7, 10 years. And I thought it would be interesting to kind of get your take on it, because you're relatively new to the system. I think less than 2 years. But
yeah, I was going to ask, bud. Like, was everybody else sick? You know, like Debbie, all the Pilates girls, stuff like this.
Actually, I've been trying to get the Pilates girls, and it's just been kind of tough to get them dialed in. So yeah, you were the consolation prize.
Yeah, that's okay. Any way that you make it, it's still good.
No,
Yeah.
but seriously, I think me and pretty much everyone else at the last workshop in Colorado were kind of blown away by how far you've come in such a short time. Like, you really hit the ground running with this, and it seems like it's been a pretty life-changing experience for you.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. I guess we got time for a longer story, eh?
As much time as you. I know. I'm gonna interrupting your usual Sunday nap time. So, however long you wanna talk until you get sleepy.
Oh man, I rescheduled for you, bud. We're all napped up and ready to go.
Oh, perfect. I appreciate that.
But yeah, some of these things are going to sound pretty familiar to folks, and I really appreciate you letting me know in advance. I had time to sit down and look at how the heck I ended up here because, well, to start off, less than 5 years ago, I was basically part-time student, full-time drinker, full-time video game player, full-time weight gainer, pretty depressed, but really wanting to make something out of my life. So we go from that to, at some point, I think it was some doctor who told me, yeah, you've got these issues that are probably always going to be with you. It's like, forget you, lady. So I decided I was going to trade alcohol for weed, and that was going to be my new medicine for a little while. And
that's a step in the right direction.
I'm sorry. Well, can we talk about this? Is this okay if I'm kind of going down a road here a little bit?
Whatever you want to talk about.
Right, okay. So when I got off the booze and onto the weed, I don't really quit anything. You'll kind of find out that I've traded addictions, finally ending up where I am now. Anyways, so with the cannabis as opposed to the alcohol, my thought processes started changing like on a deep level, and instead of like having self-destructive tendencies, I started thinking about stuff I had never really considered before.
About what age was this?
I guess I was 21, 22, okay. So that was 5 years ago.
Okay.
And, right, so like I started really taking care of myself. I lost about 60 pounds in like 4 or 5 months.
Wow.
Yeah. It was a pretty big change.
Wait. Are you saying that the whole lazy pothead sitting on the couch munching out is a myth?
My experience with cannabis is you get out of it what you put into it. Mm-hmm. So if you start with a TV show on and then you do your thing and you're getting lifted in that scenario, then that'll probably happen. At the time, I was living with my grandmother, very open-minded lady. She would let me use a vaporizer in the basement. And this was before vaporizers were the super douchey thing that they are now. I'm going to tell you, I got into it while the getting was good. And I would basically, my process was, I did a little bit of yoga back then, but it was more for fitness. I didn't know too much about spirituality. And I would go down there, do my thing, get a bit of yoga in, get a bit of exercise, and these insights would start occurring where I just started getting fascinated with ideas about life, how different processes work in the outer world, how my own brain is working and stuff like that. And that progressed to the point where I was all of a sudden kind of this different person. I was in shape and looking for adventure and stuff like that. And with that intention, adventure kind of found me in the form of a new group of friends who we were all really into house and techno music. And sometime it came up like, all right, buddy, let's go to a club. We're going to take a pill. It's going to be a good time. And this sounds kind of cliche, but that was my real, if that life change wasn't my catalyst, then this was really this was something that changed my outlook on life pretty seriously. And again, a lot of these folks that I went with ended up abusing these drugs, but I kind of went into it with a certain mindset. For some weird reason, I had done a ton of research in advance and figured out probably what I thought was the healthiest way to go about it. And I went into it with no expectations, but just kind of excitement and openness. And so here I am, 3, 4 in the morning on this dance floor. I didn't know how to dance, but you sit with a repetitive electronic music long enough, you'll figure it out. And all of a sudden, like, I'm on this dance floor, and there's like this magnetic resonance in the whole space. And I'm like, okay, that's I'm tripping. And then a few hours later, still dancing, still going with it, I can start influencing this resonance a little bit. So I'm basically dancing in a way that the whole vibe of the room, I'm like channeling it a little bit. You're in the flow with the music, and you're whoever the person you were that came in is somewhere else, and you just are the music for a little while. But wherever the heck I was, some part of my conscious like awareness was there, and it was just having fun with whatever this new like non-physical stuff all around me was. So I would magnetize myself, and then folks would come over and like dance right up next to me, and I would kind of like expand my own personal field, and folks would give me a little bit of space. I was like, well,
so you're getting kind of like
enough
feedback information in real time that this isn't all just necessarily in your head.
Right, exactly. Like, you're in that kind of an experience. I guess it depends on what you came in with. I'm not really a doubter. Like, I try to pass myself off as a rationalist, but I've always been like a believer. I was raised Christian and stuff like this, and I've always had kind of like one metaphysical idea or another that couldn't be explained. So I was pretty willing to go with this experience almost right away. But I was also, messing with it, experimenting, figuring out what works, what doesn't. And that was pretty cool. Then, did that for a little while. And then I had my first experience in what I would call non-linearity, which would soon become a much bigger concept. I didn't know what it was at the first time. Basically, going down this path of being a drug-taking hooligan. I was generally a good guy, but I would just like to, on the weekend, have a little fun. So I went to a museum and took some mushrooms. It was the first time I'd ever, taken that kind of stuff.
Museum? And, I never thought about that as a setting. That's got to be pretty awesome.
Okay, so I didn't know what was going to happen, but, something shifted to the point where time became this funny thing where it's not like I was in control of it, but the rules I thought applied didn't apply. Like, I could look at something and, this is something that's been around for a couple thousand years. It's just like, it's got this history to it, like this history you can perceive a little bit when you're paying attention. And these people around me, they're going about their business, and I can kind of start to see timelines, and I see it's like I'm going around the one corner, and I know like a security guard's going to come around the one way, and I know I don't want to look this guy in the eye, so I take a turn, and then a few seconds later, sure enough, a security guard passes, and it's just like that's kind of cool.
Wow.
And but I only messed around with that stuff a little bit. For some reason, I had the firm idea that what I was experiencing was possible without any of these handicaps. And my goal, which I developed on the dance floor one night, was to have these experiences in a state of, chemical sobriety.
Where you could look a security guy in the eye without losing your shit.
Yeah, exactly. What you gotta do, bud? I know some stuff. No, but yeah. So like I dropped all the drugs except for the cannabis because I hadn't found my new addiction yet, and I became kind of like this neo hippie, like basically the guy that JP Spears is pretending to be. Like I became a douche basically, where I was preaching all this stuff and I had no idea what I was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But I had these insights that I couldn't really maintain in day-to-day life. So I was going around and, universe and love and all this stuff. And, my friends were like, all right, Ben, I missed you when you were on your stuff. But about this time, I had obviously done something right because I met a girl, and most of the turning points in my life involved meeting a girl. But this girl, she was basically like, she had what I had when I was on it when she was sober. And this was like my first real life experience with what I'm going to call an XMan, or an X person if you want to be PC about it. So like she's doing all this stuff. I'm just thinking, whoa, okay, this is real. I want to get what you got. But she wasn't really meant to be a teacher. She just kind of came into my life to say, all right, you were right. This business is real. And hop to it, figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, like I don't have some like noble intention of becoming a healer or making a difference in the world. I wanted to be an X-Man. So I start to get serious into my spiritual practice at the time, which had kind of slowly developed into, yoga with a bit of meditation. So I figure, okay, I'll go I was about to say balls deep. Is that okay? All right. I go balls deep into classical yoga, and this just kind of happened. And
we call that embracing the lineage, but I like going balls deep too.
Well, I get into this long enough, and it clears up some of my conceptions. And besides the pursuit, the aimless pursuit of power, which was kind of what, when I think about it, I didn't really have any more noble intention than that. But there are these two questions that have been kicking around. Who am I, and what can I do here? Mm-hmm. Because, even for all my shortcomings, I've had a strong desire to be doing something useful, and I just had no idea what it was. So I stick with these questions for a little while, and I stumbled upon the Tao bums at one point, and I bet you know where the story goes from here. Start to, read about these different self-proclaimed X-Man, and I get to this one particular thread where they're all talking about what they do every day, like what are their main spiritual practices. Mm-hmm. And there's all over the board on that forum, but one commonality, almost without fail, was qigong. And I was like, qigong? I'd heard of that. I knew very little about it. But I started, looking into how that kind of stuff works, and all right, so I do an online training program, which went as well as an online training program can be expected to go.
Right.
Then eventually I go to a workshop for a different school, which explained a lot of the principles really well. But me, still having this ignoble pursuit, I want a shortcut. So I look into it a bit more, and I'm like, okay, if I'm going to get into this business quickly, I need some fellow who's like top level, walk the walk, all this business. And how I came upon some of these threads where this Yamu fellow was talking about, it felt like the real deal. Like, it's just one of those things you can't explain because he's not really saying anything.
But
Like,
your bullshit detector is not going off.
right, exactly. It's like, whoa, okay, yep, I'm sold. Bought up the DVDs, started training with that a little bit, and yeah, so I went with that for a little while, and around the same time, I was planning to go to a workshop at a woman. Her name is Jen Ward. She is a nonlinear healer. And a few weeks before I went to the workshop, like meeting Jen and going to this workshop, completely like that changed everything. I go to this workshop and well, you remember I roomed with you.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
I was kind of in a lost place at that point. The group was like incredibly inspirational people, and I started looking at, well, you, for example, like you broke this 9 to 5 curse that I was, painfully trying to get out of.
Mm-hmm.
And we were also, doing this qigong, and it just didn't seem to fit. It's just like, okay, cool guy, like does all this stuff with music, and then waves his arms around too. Like, how does that make any sense? But if you find this with a lot of people, it's like, normal, healthy, like people that you just want to be friends with.
Yeah.
Are practicing this stuff. It's just like, I hadn't seen any of that before. When I went to this classical yoga school, we had a lot of culty people, good people, but they were a little too serious about it.
Yeah.
And I went to this other training program, and everybody there is about as lost as I am, and that's fine. But when I came to this group, I was like, there's just like a feeling here, like
you kind of feel like after like a day or two, you kind of feel like you've known these people for years, right?
Yeah, it was the weirdest thing. We're going out for beers and like having good sushi and just shooting the shit. And like like 3 hours ago we were doing some epic non-physical non-linear stuff, and now we're just BSing, having a good time. This is the weirdest but most awesome thing. And I can totally see myself making this a part of my life. I didn't actually put the pieces together until a few months later, but a week after this workshop, I quit the job that had kind of been...
A week later?
A week later.
Wow.
And, I didn't even think about it at the time. I was just like, A plus B equals ? But no, you look back on it, and a week after the workshop, I'd gotten out of my 9 to 5.
Mm-hmm.
And I started up in something, not great, but better. And I basically was working on a daily basis with this non-linear healer, Jen Ward. I was practicing my Stillness Movement on a daily basis. And, I was dropping a lot of stuff at that point because I had this idea that I was going to be in finance and, I was going to be a big shot, and I had to let a lot of that go. To the point where when I was finally ready, I ended up getting let go from this job, which was awkward because it was a family business. Well, that's how it
you must have been performing really, really poorly. Like, well, I don't care, you're related to me, we can't have this.
There was that, but also, like, it just so happened that I wasn't needed anymore. Like, there was no malicious
Right.
It just like, okay, like, this is not for me. I already knew that. I knew that pretty early going into it. But that was a scary time.
I've had some of that too when I started practicing these kind of things that you find yourself being stuck with kind of fall away naturally, where you don't have to even do much.
Yeah, it finds you. You just stick with it, and it seems to find you.
Mm-hmm.
So right before I ended up getting let go, we had that Hilton Head workshop, which I don't think you made it to that one.
No.
November last year.
No, I didn't make it to that one.
Right. That sorry to tell you, it was awesome.
I hear a lot of stories about that one being pretty epic.
Right. That's where I fell in love with what's going on in Stillness Movement, because I'd stuck with it for a while and I'd had some weird experiences, but rational mind is still going to put up some walls.
Mm-hmm.
And by that point, I said, okay, this is some stuff. This is for me. And right, so then I come back like on this high, get let go almost right away, and I can't even argue with it. I'm like, the rationale was good. Like, I was not needed anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But I had basically like put a 6-month halt on a career track which I had like worked the last 5 years to build. So I was like, wow, I could start over with that, but that just feels heavy. I have no idea what to do. So while I'm thinking about it, like at a pretty low point, lightning bolt comes up. Well, you want to know who you are. You want to know what you can do that's going to be useful. You have this option that was just basically gifted to you, where you could work as a healer. And I was like, yep, that's the one. It's funny. It happened one night. I had the idea, and my mom had the idea at the same time, like the same moment. And so that, because I was going to talk myself out of it, it was helpful to have her, okay, this came from something that this is going to be good. So I start on this track, and I'm starting from like no momentum, because like, okay, now I got to pay for this. This is not cheap. Now I got to find out how. But anyways, pieces just started coming together. I stuck with it. I was grinding, training.
You're talking about massage school?
Yeah, like, wanting to go and going there in a way that's not going to, like, I had no money. Right. I didn't have much, but the pieces really came together in a space of about 4 months. Then eventually, just sticking with it, some distractions along the way. In May, I started going, and that was another turning point. In May, my mom came out to Stillness Movement, which was awesome.
Oh,
because she took to it much quicker than me. She's a natural, and I don't think you were there for that one either, buddy.
No, I only made it, I think, to one workshop that last year.
Right.
That's why I was kind of. But next time I saw you, you're like an expert.
Oh, well, I talk a big game. That's part of the trick.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. But yeah, so I start school, and like my life suddenly becomes like I'm interested in what I'm going to do, and I'm like, wow, that's cool, because before I was looking at like tax codes and all this stuff, and like I don't know what kind of person gets interested about that, but it's not me. So we were learning about like the human structure and how it repairs itself, and I'm like, oh yes, please. I met pretty like within 10 days of school, I met my girlfriend I'm still with, and she's a natural X person, like crazy, powerful, all this stuff. It annoys the crap out of me because I think I train a lot harder than she does, but she's just like
everything comes
super
easier.
good.
Well, I think this stuff comes easier to girls in general. They're not as locked up as we are.
There's an argument to be made that the rational mind is like one of the major obstacles for getting in the door.
Yeah.
And anyways, so, going with that for a while, things are going good. October was Estes Park, where you were definitely there.
Yep.
That was beautiful Stillness Movement workshop. And for the first time that I can remember, the workshop gave me a solid glimpse onto the other side. And so, like, after 4 years of swimming around the kiddie pool and collecting pool toys, I finally got into the deep end a little bit. It's like, all right, this is kind of cool. And I seem to remember talking to you that you might have had a similar experience, maybe not like your first time, but we were talking afterwards, and I'm like, whoa, this was really, really worth it.
Yeah. For me too, I went deeper than I normally go. I almost never get anything that far out. I know other people also kind of it drives you crazy when someone's like having all these visions and stuff, and you got nothing.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. No, I got to deal with that on a daily basis now. But
with your ex-man girlfriend.
Yeah, like see, this is another thing about sticking with this practice. Like, I thought I was a good person, and it's not that I'm not, but sticking with this, I have seen all the qualities in myself that I personally want to change. And that, that jealousy or whatever you want to call it is a big one. And the way things are going, the more I practice, the less I can ignore that kind of stuff. It just seems to become like the main problem in my life that I have these qualities. So it's like, okay, guess this is my job right now. And right, so the last February? Okay, no, the last 2 months, 3 months, whatever. And been basically going into this and doing very little else. It's kind of taken over everything, but it's also the best I've ever been. That's where I'm at now, I suppose.
That's awesome, and I don't suppose you miss your 9-to-5 finance job all that much?
Dude, I tried so many ways to make that job cool, but at the end of the day,
well, I think you missed I missed a boat. I think you missed a boat there. I think the way to make it cool is if you could, see security guards coming around the corner. You should have cultivated that power and use it to pick mutual funds. I think that's the way to go.
Well, you know what? I did pretty good with that, but I don't think that was anything special. I think I just, I applied normal faculties and basic principles. Okay, some of it was intuition, which was kind of cool. But the thing about that is, you got this client across from you, and you say, okay, bud, I want you to put $100,000 into this because I had a dream last night. Trust me. All right, we'll do this.
He came to me in a vision.
It's like, pick that to my commissioner and see what he says.
I had a dream. This angel with a fiery sword came to me and said, you really need to invest into Weinstein Pictures.
Oh, doing that contrarian play. Yeah, that's a good way to make money. Hit it when it's low.
Yeah.
But maybe there's an ethical barrier. So where I'm at right now, I've been listening to your podcast, and I've gotten a lot out of hearing. Like, these are the 4 people you've had on are like 4 of my favorite people, and I don't know Brian Willis, but I'm sure he's equally awesome.
Brian Willis?
But yeah, Brian. I never met that dude, but if he seems like a cool guy.
Yeah.
But the 4 folks you did have on, okay. So here's what I noticed about what is holding me back from just being pure deep end into the practice right now. Ben Rosen talked about the importance of experience over concepts. And, I love my concepts. Like, I just go crazy over, like, reading about different kinds of spirituality and, like, oh, look at this. Here's a parallel in Hermeticism that works out into what we do. Isn't that cool? And everyone's like, Ben, just do it. Like, what are you doing? But yeah, I got some ways to go with that. Michael he didn't talk about any pitfalls, but what we were talking about in the podcast is embracing the lineage.
Mm-hmm.
And this is part confession, part telling my story, but I'm eclectic in the worst kind of way. Like, I will suddenly develop a huge interest in Freemasonry and download all the books related to that, and then read about half of one, and then be like, no, forget about it. And okay, on to the next one. All right, so esoteric Christianity, how do we make this work? And mess around with that, and it's like, well, I'm kind of getting off track a little bit here, and there is something to be said about how this kind of stuff dilutes what's given, because to someone coming at it rationally, the Stillness Movement teachings were given in a way that purposely kind of strips out a lot of the technicality to make them accessible, right?
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
And that's one of the things that Michael takes a lot of shit for from other practitioners, is that there isn't a lot of attention paid, at least in the beginning, about, alignment or posture or like a lot of precision to the movement, but a lot of attention is paid to the energetic aspects of it and the intent that you are going into these moves with.
Right. Okay. So to use an analogy, reading this book and getting an intellectual handle on the basic concepts, you can set your coordinates, and then you go to the workshop, and Mike will kick you out to sea. But you're already going the right direction, so you just got to stick with it. Mm-hmm. But most of what you get on your journey is not going to be what you read in a book. Or this, to me, it seems plain as day, but you ask me a year ago, I'd be like, oh, come on. Mm-hmm. You learn everything from books. What are you talking about?
Yeah. Well, there's a kind of a fine line there. You want to maintain your curiosity, and you want to explore everything that's out there. But I guess as far as the actual practice and sticking with something, there is the danger of just jumping to, if you jump from one thing to the other. Each one of these practices, whatever you choose, are meant to take you deep, and it's meant to be like a deep, lifelong practice. So if you just spend a couple of months here and a couple of months there and just jump from one to the other, you're never going to find a really deep value in it.
Right. Go back to my analogy of the kiddie pool. Like I'm in the shallow end of the kiddie pool, and I got all the fanciest pool toys. But the thing is, the pearls are at the bottom of the deep end. Mm-hmm. And I'm holding all these pool toys, which keep me buoyant and stop me from jumping down there to get that pearl. Yeah. But fancy pool toys. No, I'm just kidding. It's really just like decorations. Researching all this extra, comparative religion, whatever you want to call it, it's been handy, but not really useful in any meaningful way, because I'm not like conversing with Wiccans on a daily basis, or like having to deal with folks where I'll be able to speak their language and just have this obsessive, like compulsive, like drive to seek information. Mm-hmm. And it comes up when I start making progress. Like, here's an interesting trend. Maybe you can, maybe you've noticed in your life since you start practicing. When I start to get somewhere with the practice where I'm really getting some momentum, somebody will come out of the blue and be like, yo, let's go get hammered. Or like, I'll suddenly like find this good reason to throw it all away for a couple of hours. Mm-hmm. And, well, do you have any, does that ever happen to you?
That's the devil. That's the devil. That's the devil trying to drag you to hell. What else could it be?
Well, it's a recurring theme anyways.
Yeah.
And, okay, so what else? Oh, Brian Beller. Brian said, set your intent and get out of the way. Mm-hmm. And that is currently probably the main hindrance to what I do in healing, because, I've learned a little bit about physiology and stuff like this, where I want to control the whole process, but it's not really what I understand what this energetics is meant to do. Like, yeah, you set your intent in a particular way, but as far as I can tell, I'm not the one who makes the magic happen. Like, I might be wrong about this because I'm still pretty new to this, but every time I've had an incredible result with the clinical practice, there's been an element of like surrendering, or like not consciously being involved in the outcome, not being tied to the outcome. And that's something I got to work on, like ASAPly. Finally, I guess Sonny said something like, don't overemphasize the power of the Dantian and be the empty vessel. And that gets right down to my primary motivation for getting into all this in the first place. It was like, yeah, I didn't have the most noble pursuits. And the interesting thing about this system is, like, virtue, whatever you want to call it, seems to be like at least somewhat tied to the progress you make, if not directly tied. So, well, that's something else to work on. But all those things considered, that's pretty much how I got here, and I think I described where I'm at pretty good as well.
And it's funny, like, listening to you and to other people talk about it, everyone, like, I'm noticing that everyone is such a harsh critic of themselves that, if you really look at it objectively, what everyone is doing is pretty amazing, and everyone is doing just a fantastic job at, growing and shedding all these layers of old habits and bad, and working on being useful in the world. But if you talk to anyone, everyone's always like, I'm not doing enough, I'm not practicing enough, I get in my way too much. And it's funny, but I guess there's really no other way to go about it, and I guess we're all growing.
No, that's a good point, actually. I can't think of one person. Well, maybe some of the folks you've had on seem to be like they've gone through enough that they have a healthy sense of, like, self-respect, and they know where they're at. Yeah.
But I guess maybe people a little bit, that only been in it a few years.
Right.
The Sunny conversation was pretty, influenced me a lot too. Just the amount of time and practice that he fits in, where it's, pretty much every opportunity he gets to cultivate, he takes it. That's like the number one priority. That kind of helped reorient me a lot too.
Right.
I have a lot more kind of focus on stillness movement now. I kind of was, because I got into it from having to deal with a physical issue, I kind of was drawn more to the gift of the Tao and more of the movable part of the practice. And now I'm kind of shifting the scales more towards stillness movement, because I was kind of neglecting that a little bit. And after talking with Sonny, where that is primarily his practice, it seems, is more stillness movement than gift of the Tao. I've kind of sort of adopted that, and that's been very, very interesting lately.
Nice. Yeah, I remember him talking about that. Like, when he said it's the goalless practice, I was like, oh, duh. Why didn't I think of that? I'm just like, I was sitting there like, oh man, I need to move around and pull in this chi.
Exactly. And that's has been kind of an obstacle for me, is I find that one of the things that makes a huge difference in my day is if I start it with a practice as the first thing during the day, then that completely smooths out, and the rest of my day will go much better energetically. emotionally, everything. But it's very hard for me to do it first thing in the morning, because first thing in the morning I want a cup of coffee and check my Facebook and all that nonsense.
Yep.
And it might be too cold or it's too hot or whatever, like just all these things that get in the way of you practicing. But I find that because, the stillness, the sitting there is so simple, I could just do it. I'm still in bed. I could even just sit up in bed and do it for 15 minutes before I do anything else. And it's not that hard.
And that's what you're doing right now?
Kind of. I mean, I still do Gift of the Tao and stuff, but I try to, as much as possible, at least start my day with the stillness practice, and then try to get a movement practice in later on in the day, maybe in the evening.
Nice. Yeah, that's it's become kind of a necessity at this point, because now that I'm working on folks at the clinic at school and stuff like that, like I get pretty darn sick because the modality is set up in a way that's kind of contrary to stillness movement principles. For the type of massage that they work, Michael talks a lot about not creating a feedback loop that connects yourself to the client by putting two hands on them, because you're going to be, basically pumping yourself full of their stuff.
Yeah.
And we do have the shielding methods, which I've had, variable levels of success with, more since I've taken the practice more seriously. But there's no motivation like
self-preservation. Yeah. I find that too, because I don't have I'm not in school, or I don't have a practice. It's not I'll do treatments once in a while on someone that needs help, but because it's not a regular thing, that's also kind of gives me a little bit more room for excuses and laziness. But when I do have someone that needs help and that I know I need to do my best, that's when I really get my ass in gear and step up the practice. So having yourself exposed to that on a regular basis, I'm sure kind of helps you stay dedicated.
Right. Okay. All right. Now I want to ask you a question, bud.
Sure.
On the one podcast, you made some comment like, I didn't get into this like a seeker. I think it was when you're talking to Ben Rosen, and like I don't know you like as well as your mother, but like, I mean, you've got some of the like key indicators of someone who's seeking for a deeper truth. Like, first of all, some of this stuff you're sending me, it's like super deep. So what the heck happened? How'd you get into all this business?
Well, a lot of it I actually do get from my mom. She is kind of the seeker, and I just get a lot of this trickle down stuff from her. Like she would, since I was young, I would get stuff from her of psychology and philosophy and meditation and conspiracies, and so I kind of, that kind of helped form my mind. I mean, I am a seeker in a sense where I am interested in all these things, but not, I don't know. At the same time, like when I look at other people, that explore all these things and like constantly read books, I'm not exactly like that. I don't know. I guess I'm maybe a little bit more passive about it, where like I can recognize something if it comes my way that this is important, this has truth, or this has some kind of like a deep meaning to it, and I'll explore it. But maybe I don't necessarily must go, and I don't know. I'm kind of a weird mix of like two different people.
But you're laid back either way. Like I don't know. It doesn't seem like there's a huge conflict there, anyway, as far as I can tell.
There is. My biggest conflict, I would say, is between the side of me that's into this kind of spiritual, esoteric practice stuff and, all of this. And then there's another part of me that's very rational and like, cut the shit and, get your hippie nonsense out of here. And they're like these two parts of me that I'm kind of always having to reconcile or balance.
Okay.
Or maybe I should just kill one of them.
Well, this has been my issue recently, and really starting actually, I was listening to the Brian Willis episode of the podcast. This fellow, who is just about as rational and logical as anyone you could ever meet, has actually, developed a mental framework under which these undescribable happenings and teachings can kind of fit, not neatly, but there's nothing neat about quantum mechanics that I know about.
Right.
And you seem to have been working on that kind of framework as well.
Yeah, and that's really kind of my interest in all this is, I mean, whatever else is going on higher levels or the spirit realm or whatever, we do live in some kind of a 3D material world that we have to deal with, whether it's all an illusion or not. And I have a suspicion that all this, metaphysical stuff is actually, it's the reality. It's part of your complete reality. And I think we're doing ourselves maybe a disservice by splitting it off into this is metaphysical, spiritual, and this is the ordinary and the mundane. And because they may not be, maybe they're not separable, and it's just, you need to integrate these things, and it may be this qigong and all this energy is just something that we're scientifically not sophisticated enough to explain or understand. We can do it with the practice and the personal embedding yourself into that world. But I don't know. I kind of have a suspicion that you can you can connect these two worlds, the real world and this esoteric spiritual stuff, that it's just part of one complete reality that we're going to have to integrate sooner or later.
That is so interesting, because that you basically described my core driving force into getting into all this stuff that you could file under the category of strange. Mm-hmm. I've held that belief, and it's been an irrational belief, but I've never let go of it. And it's basically what got me to this point. If I didn't have that, then it would have been a lot easier to write off all these very hard to explain happenings that, if you're open to, just pop up in these workshops.
And really, I think we're just victims of the time, the space-time that we were born into, that all these things were kind of part and parcel of humanity's history for thousands of years. Pretty much every culture had spiritual traditions and practices and beliefs that they worked into their everyday lives. And because we got so clever with our tools and our bang sticks, that we kind of separated the two, and now it's very very difficult for people like us, that you're brought up with this rational bringing in the modern world, and now all of a sudden you're having these weird experiences and you don't really have a good context to fit them into, and it's a constant inner struggle.
Right. Okay, so now to get a tiny bit philosophical.
Sure.
I've been paying attention to this strain of scientism, if you want to call it. Basically, the belief that fundamental reality is material and can be broken down to subatomic particles and understood from that base level. Do you think, where do you think that kind of strain of thought is headed? Because it seems to me to be the dominant, academic way of thinking about things. But even by science's own claims, it's getting murky to hold on to.
Yeah. I mean, it's
discoveries.
Yeah, and that's what we've seen in the last 100 years or so, is that they've just keep getting into stuff that's weird and inexplicable. And if you try to persist with this idea, you keep running into weird things with quantum mechanics and with multiple dimensions and string theory and all of that. I think if science is unable to let go of that model, they're just going to keep chasing their own tail forever.
Yeah. Do you think the core rationalists become a full out, sorry, not core rationalist, scientific, what do you want to call it? Mechanical, oh my gosh, the model where basically anything you can see is all there is. Do you think those folks splinter off and become a separate strain of thought, or do you think that that current kind of is always in the background with scientific progress?
It's hard to say. I think that's a function of just the society that kind of science has brought up. And I think, we're starting to see some pretty hopeful trends where psychedelics are now becoming much more acceptable. We're finding therapeutic uses for them. I think when it becomes maybe mainstream enough where, it's not just weird hippie seekers that are having these experiences, I think science is going to be a lot more fluid. And that's, really, if you go back and look at all the immense scientific discoveries that took place in the last century, a lot of them were inspired by, LSD trips and psychedelic experiences and stuff like that. And a lot of it is not talked about a lot, but it's there. So I think if that becomes more normalized and people kind of realize where the fertile ground that is, where you're not just locked into your rational mind and just, playing with beakers, hopefully it'll evolve more in that direction and be more of a fusion thing between the physical and the metaphysical. But who knows?
Well, Paul, it's been a pleasure having you on the Ben Tennant Show. Thank you very much for answering all my questions. Yeah. No, man, I'm new to this. I don't have that much to talk about. So yeah.
No, this is great, and this is primarily kind of what I wanted to pick your brain about. Is like I said, it was a pretty quick, life-changing thing for you. Where I met you at that first workshop, and you're in finance and kind of doing the 9-to-5 thing, and then you're completely different life track, and you seemed super fulfilled and inspired and very good at it. I gotta say, you seem like you're really found your track. So I'm really glad, and this was great.
Yeah, man. Well, all I can say to that, I figure at some point somebody will come along and just either be lost or not sure about stuff like that. And the only thing I can say is, you got the good intention to start with, hold on to that and stick with it, and it'll take you places that you did not imagine going. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly where my life is headed, and I can't wait to find out what the heck happens in 6 months, 1 year, 2 years from now.
Awesome. Yep, I concur. Well, all right, man. This is really great talking to you. Thanks for making the time.
Thank you very much, Paul, and thanks for letting me cut the line.
Hey, you're always looking for shortcuts. This is perfect for you.
Yeah, I know. Eh? I don't know. I'm sure you're talking to all these folks. I'm sure you're. No.
This is great, and like you said earlier, I kind of have the same feeling that this group of people are very special, and one of the reasons I wanted to do this podcast is just to talk to everyone outside of a workshop once or twice or 3 times a year, but kind of stay in touch and stay with abreast of everyone's process and how they got into it, because we don't often get this deep into it during the workshop. So this is awesome, and you were one of the people that I had an interest with all this stuff. So really, really good to get a little bit of the backstory to all this from you.
Cool, man.
Well, awesome. Thanks for coming on, and have a good rest of your Sunday. Get your nap in if I haven't interfered with that.
Yeah, I got some napping to do. Thanks very much for having me. And, enjoy your sunshine out there in Sandy.
Will do. Take care.